cleft of the rock that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love, and covers me there with his hand, and covers me there with his hand. Last verse. When clothed in his brightness, transported I rise to meet him in clouds of the sky. His perfect salvation, his wonderful love, I'll shout with the millions on high. He hideth my soul in the cleft of the rock that shadows a dry, thirsty land. He hideth my life in the depths of his love, and covers me there with his hand, and covers me there with his hand. Very good. Let's go, Lord, in prayer. Does anybody have a spoken prayer request? Pray for Marie. David said that she's doing well and healing, but she needs more healing. Just pray for continued healing. She'll get better and she'll be able to bend her knee and be able to walk right without pain. Okay? You else with a spoken prayer request? Okay. Pray for Mr. Joe's son Randy. I visited him, and he's spiritual good when today I talked to him. He said he doesn't feel any different than when he was diagnosed with cancer. He said he doesn't feel any different, but I think he's getting tired, more than anything else. But spiritually good, dealing with it. Okay. Okay. Charlie, got anything? Okay. Okay. They're all here tonight. Feeling better, right? Yeah. Everyone's getting that croupy coffee stuff, and it's weather changing. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you, love, and mercy, and giving us to us. I pray to bless Marie with healing, bless Charlie's kids with their been sick and recover with got sick just allergies, and pray for Randy. Pray to direct us, Lord, that you help us be a witness for Christ we ought to be, and pray for those that are coming this weekend that you'll bless them. I thank you for the services we got to enjoy this week. I pray that you bless Brother Curlick as he comes to us this Sunday, bless our homecoming the following Sunday, that we'll see some of our family, church family come back to church. Those are out of church and haven't been going anywhere for a while during COVID, and COVID's not going to doesn't look like it's going to go away, Lord. So they need to come back. I pray you'll bless our service tonight. That will bring honor and glory to you. In Jesus' name we ask. One announcement is Travis Curlock's going to preach for us this Sunday. He preached for us a couple of years ago it's probably been 2 years ago last time he preached when I was out of town. So he's a good guy. We've known him since he was a teenager, I guess, and he's just a great guy. Charlie, that's the one you asked me about recently, probably 6 months ago, was when I called him. And he was, I'm booked. Hey, I was trying to go get him homecoming or something like that. And he said, I'm booked that Sunday. He's preaching a lot, different places. And he said this coming Sunday is the only week he was open, so he's going to preach for us this Sunday morning. And I saw a guy Monday night. Jared and I went to hear a guy I graduated college with became the pastor out there in Indiana where the college was at, and he became pastor while Jared was there, John Wilkerson. So he was preaching in Beckley, so Jared wanted to go down to hear him preach down there in Beckley, and so we got to go down there Monday night. It was really good just to be around a couple people that hadn't seen in a long time. I think last time I saw Pastor John was at Rebecca's graduation, which is how long, like 8 or 10 years ago. Her college graduation, I think it was 10 years ago. She's 30 now. It's 20. I was supposed to say her age. Anyway, so it's been a while. So I got to see some of his friends, and I got to see a friend of mine that we went to school with. That he lives down there. He was pastoring, took a church and that closed down during. He took a church during COVID, and they couldn't keep it going. And he was a missionary for years, probably missionary for 20 years. But he's back here in the States, and I'm going to try to have him come preach for us. His name's Marty, and it'd be good to have him preach for us sometime soon. Okay? Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3. We'll read two verses, Colossians chapter 3, two verses we read last week, and then we're going to go on from there. Colossians chapter 3, verse 15 and 16. We'll start there, and then it gives us a command of what we're supposed to do, and then the next verses below that tells us how to put into practice those things that we're told to do in these two verses, okay? Colossians chapter 3, verse 15 and 16 says this, let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you are called in one body, and be ye thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. I want to look at that. The first part of verse 15 says, let the peace of God rule in your hearts. And then verse 16 says, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom. I want to look at these two things because it's commands, but I don't think God gives us commands, doesn't tell us how to do it. Okay? Charlie, you can tell your students at school how to do something, but if you don't give them instructions, a lot of times just don't know what to do. Okay? Sometimes we got that's what people say about me with the computers, okay? They showed me how to turn it on, and that was it. I remember the first time I went skiing. Some friends of mine were going out in high school. Some friends of mine had been, one of them went a lot, and one of them had been a few times. So we went to snowshoes. My senior year of high school, we went to snowshoe to ski one day, drove up there for the day to go skiing. My friends, that's what friends will do to you, 17 years old is what they'll do. They showed me how to put my skis on. That is it, okay? Just follow me. And so they went off and we rode the ski lift up. They didn't put me on the beginner slope. They didn't do anything like that. No, they went to the Black Diamond place called Ball Hooter, which is like a great downhill ski slope for those who are experienced skiers. But these guys, these are my friends, Phil and Tony. They showed me how to put my skis on. I fell getting off the lift. Okay, and then stood up, and they took off over this hill, which in the summertime is probably a rock cliff. It was so just, And so I was wondering if back in those days in the 70s, in which worldwide sports it would have the agony of defeat. You see some guy that was tumbling down the ski slope on a giant ski jump or whatever, and I felt that's the way I felt the whole day because I didn't have any instructions on how to do what I was doing. And the next time I went skiing, I got instructions how to do it. I really enjoyed it. The first time, though, I didn't have ski bibs. We didn't have waterproof clothing, so my blue jeans were soaking wet because I sweat anyway. And so it was a freezing day with no instruction, and it was not fun for me. I think about that. Some people the Bible tells you to do something, and they say, I don't understand it, so they never read it again. Okay, they don't look for the instructions. Okay. In this, let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Okay, how do you got that peace rule in your hearts? Okay? Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in songs of hymns. And that goes in, that's the principle we're supposed to live by. But it goes in the next few verses and gives us the application of these things. Okay? So I'm going to read start verse 18. And I'm going to read down through chapter 4, verse 1. Okay? Here we go. 3:18. Here we go. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fit in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well pleasing unto the Lord. Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever you do it heartily as to the Lord, not to men, knowing that of the Lord you shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. But he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respect of persons. Masters, give unto your servants that which is just and equal, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. I want to look at these things just for a few minutes. In verse 18 says wives. In verse 19 it says husbands. Who's given the command to follow? Wives, submit yourselves, right? That's what it says. Okay, in 20 it says children, and then it says fathers. Who's given the command first? The children or the fathers? The children, right? So the wives are given the command before the husbands are given the command. The children are given the command before the fathers are given the command. And when it says fathers, I'm including that, fathers and mothers. Okay? Verse 22 says servants, and then chapter 4, verse 1 says masters. So who's giving the command first? The follower or the leader? The follower, right? That means you're supposed to follow even if your leader's not doing right. Is that right? If you're giving your command, it doesn't say wives. It does not say wives submit yourselves unto your husband if your husband's doing right. Not what it says. It doesn't say children obey your parents if your parents do everything you want. Right? That's not what it says. It's for servants. And when we read down there in servants, a lot of those people he's writing to are slaves. Okay, we think of slavery as a bad thing. It is a bad thing. But in those days, servants and masters could also be translated slaves and masters, because a lot of people they're indentured servants or they're slaves. Okay, or some got paid wages. We understood the term wages. So if you're a wife, and a lot of shows a widow, but a lot of wives want to take that verse, wives submit yourselves to your husbands. They want to cross that verse out. You mark that one out. I don't want to do that. Okay? Some wives would say, well, if you knew what kind of husband I had, if God knew what kind of husband I had, he wouldn't tell me to submit. Well, most often wives choose their husbands. Right? Michelle choose you. She points you out of the crowd and said, that's the one. Huh? She didn't have to say yes. That's right. Okay. A lot of people that are in the following position would tell the person in the leader, would say, I don't have to do what the Bible says I have to do because the leader's not doing their job. That's not what it says. Okay? And we can reverse that around and say, okay, as parents, well, all of us are parents, as parents, when it says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, provoke not your children to wrath, another verse says, we're supposed to do everything we're supposed to do as parents to lead our children to Christ, to lead them in the right direction. Okay? So we're responsible for what we do in the training of our children. People think you start training children when they're 12 years old. I think you start training the children before you leave the hospital when they're born. I think the training begins then. Jace knows when I say no means no. Now, a lot of times I'll just walk with him and let him walk where he wants to go. We go to the ball field, Josiah's playing. I'll do whatever he wants to do. We'll just keep going. Okay, with Jace, because he's only 1 year old. But he knows when Papa says no, Papa says no. And he knows no has a meaning to it. Okay? A lot of kids, if a parent or an adult or a teacher, somebody else in their life says no, that means absolutely nothing to them. They just keep on going. Okay? Somewhere along the line, we got to learn to follow before we can learn to lead. Does that make sense? I'm sure Charlie has 8th graders that want to be in charge of the classroom. Fine, they can teach they can teach a class someday when they're old enough, right? If they learn to follow, then eventually they'll turn around. They'll have other people following them. Okay, to me that's biblical principle. Okay, any questions about that? Does a wife have to obey her husband? What if he's lost? What if he's a heathen? Another verse of scripture says the husband, unbelieving husband, can be won by the conversation of the wife. That's not yakking at him. A lot of times a lost man will get saved because his wife got saved. Okay? I'll use Preacher Becky as an example. She got saved, and he saw the transformation in her, and then he got saved. Okay? Sometimes it happens the opposite way. Bruce and Patty. Bruce got saved first, and she thought something was wrong with him. Because his language changed, his behavior changed, what has got into you. You know, the way she explained it, she likes to be adamant about how she explains stuff. When Bruce got saved, she wasn't saved. When Bruce got saved, it was such a drastic change in how he led their home, and he was leading their home. When he got saved, it changed everything for them. Okay? When Becky got saved, though, preacher wasn't saved yet. And so when Becky got saved, he saw the transformation. won by the conversation of their wives. Okay? Okay. Well, Brother John, so my boss not doing right, then I don't have to do right either. I've had people that I worked with or worked for that were dishonest didn't give me the right to be dishonest. I've had people that I worked for or worked with that didn't do the right thing. And, okay. Some stories I can't tell. So I know someone that was publicly honest, publicly put on a good show. Privately, they did stuff that was bad, that I thought was really bad, and people around them didn't know it. Okay, it bothered me. That's why we end up here. Okay, we left where we were. Okay. So the husbands, or the fathers, or the masters, parents and masters, command as if everything rises and falls on you. He says, "Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath." Another verse, "Fathers, provoke not your children to anger." This verse, "Provoke not your children to anger." What angers somebody? What angers children more than anything else? Sorry, you got 3 kids. Well, you know what I think? You know what I think angers them more than anything else is the hypocrisy. Like if you don't do your stuff, and there's people that do that. Give the kids the chores just because you don't want to do them. Bathe the dog, whatever, just because you don't want to do it. Or okay, if there's a lot of parents, you probably deal with this in school kids. There's a lot of parents that have a do as I say mentality, not do as I do mentality, and kids. That provokes kids to anger. Okay, read your Bible. Oh, okay, why don't you read your Bible? Sing praises. I told you to. Okay, Dad, why don't you sing? Okay, once I started, I can say when I was 17, once I started reading the Bible, I looked at my parents differently. Okay, like my dad and my mom, I think both led by example. I don't think either one of them would ask you to do something they couldn't do. Oh, my dad didn't cook or bake or anything like that, but he worked a lot, but he did stuff like that. But he would tell you to sing if he didn't sing. He'd sing right in the center of the choir, bass section of the choir at church. The whole time I was growing up, and he'd sing the choir. He would tell us to sing if he wasn't singing. Mom taught Sunday school class. She never taught us Sunday school. I was in her Sunday school class. She never taught a lesson she didn't live. Okay, it's easy to follow them. Easy to do what they said. And they worked hard, and they worked hard. They did right. They did within the boundaries of what they were taught growing up. They said they lived within those boundaries all their life, and it's easy to follow that example. Okay, I knew other kids when I was growing up whose parents didn't do what they told the kids to do, and I've watched it now. 40 years in the ministry, I've watched parents tell kids to do stuff that they wouldn't do. Right. Miss Joe, are you good at memorizing verses? Are you good at memorizing Bible verses? I'm not either. Charlie, you good at that? You know what happens? Our cognitive skills change. I think. I think they go downhill. I think starting by the time you're high school, college. I don't know. But when Rebecca was memorizing all kinds of verses, we were memorizing verses with. I can't tell you what they were now. Okay, I can't go back and I can't. I struggle with it. When I was in college. You should memorize all the kids I went to school with. They grew up in Sunday school. I never missed a service or whatever, and they could memorize chapters. And I was like, you do this. And I said, I forgot what street I live on. I'm just lucky I got to show up. I'm surprised the college accepted me. These other guys have been quoting verses all their life. I'm way out of my class here. But in reality, we never asked Rebecca to do stuff we couldn't do or we wouldn't do. Okay, I tried to memorize the verses with her, and she would. Okay, what's it, verse 17? Verse 16 said, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs." That's just one of the verses I remember. I memorized the verse. Okay, now, I may have memorized that before Rebecca was born, probably. And then I'm sure somewhere along her growing up years, she had that verse as well. So it came back to me, just memorizing, seeing the verse again, and read it over. Okay. Y'all make notes too, and I'll lose them. Okay, so the follower is supposed to follow whether the leader's doing right or not. Doesn't give us right to do wrong if they're doing wrong. Okay, the leader is supposed to lead by example. The preacher that Jared and I went to hear Monday night, he said he's talking to a prison warden. He said he asked the congregation. This preacher's doing talking. He said, "Can you tell me what the number one reason is that people are in prison? Number one reason that people are in prison, go to prison." He said, "There's two." He said, as a prison warden, and it's probably this guy's from Indiana, near Chicago. So that's probably who he's talking to, somebody up in one of those prisons. I know there's one close up there where his church is at, big prison. He said, "There's two reasons people go to prison." He said, the second most obvious reason is because people get on drugs. And they do stuff they shouldn't do while on drugs. The number one reason people go to prison is anger. Really. They got anger they killed somebody. They got anger they shot somebody. They got anger they broke this law. They got angry about something. They got angry. He said, as a prison warden, he said, if you could get anger out of people, they would never go back to prison. If you can get that out of them. Okay? When the scripture says, "Provoke not your children to wrath, provoke not your children to anger," that means that we're not supposed to be hypocritical about anything we say or do. Okay? Okay. Questions on that? Once, more, twice. Okay. Let's down verse 22. Servants. I think, as I said before a few minutes ago, this was written. A lot of people that he's written to are slaves, or they're basically owned by somebody. They may not be in chains or shackles, but they're somebody who really owns them, that they work for. Okay. Servants, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever you, okay, that means you work when, some people only work when you're watching them. Okay? I can tell you how many people I've worked with in the last 40 years. I've been working for 45 years. I started my first time clock job when I was 15. 45 years I've been working. I can tell you how many people I've worked with that if you're not right there with them, working with them or watching them, they will not work. They'll stop. Immediately stop. It was bad before the cell phones come out, but now people can text. Man, they're hiding. Okay? There's a in our warehouse, you come out down on ground level, or from like where my office is at, you come out on the upper level, and there's a guy that he doesn't work for us anymore. Whenever you walk out there on an upper level, you can always see him out there texting. And if he looked up and saw you, instead of putting his phone in his pocket, he'd just walk over behind the next aisle where you couldn't see him. Texting. And if you walk down the aisle, hey. Okay? The boss asked him, said because I complained about it, other people complained about it, stuff's not getting done, right? So the boss said, tomorrow morning, or on Thursday, whatever day of the week it was, he said, tomorrow morning when you come in, I want you to come in, set your phone on my desk. You come up, you start at 8 o'clock, you come and get your phone. You don't need it in the warehouse. You need to be pouring these orders and taping boxes and putting labels on. You need to count stuff. And he said, put your phone on my desk, you come up and check your text messages at 10 o'clock, and then put it back and come back at 12 o'clock. You know what the boy did? The next day, he came in and put the key on the boss's desk and never come back. Okay? Because he couldn't live without his phone. Okay? He can oh, how can this be? Okay? You can't work. Okay? Yeah. Back to the text. Servants in all things, obey in all things your masters according to the flesh, not with eye service, just because they're watching you, as men pleasers, but in singleness of heart, fearing God. And whatsoever you do, no matter what your job you're doing, I think about Marlon working at the dairy, or he worked for the water company at different places he worked. Charlie's a teacher. I think about all the jobs that I've had, either working in construction, roofing the houses, working at the grocery store, working in the steel shop. I guess I didn't hold down jobs very well, did I? All these different jobs that I had or went through, okay? Working on the dock at overnight trucking company while I was in college, all those jobs, I was given my job, and I didn't have to be watched, okay? Especially after I got saved. When I was a kid, sometimes maybe I wasn't always doing what I was supposed to be doing. But by the time I got saved, it's like, okay, if that's what I'm supposed to be doing, that's where I'm going. That's what I'm doing, okay? Even if I'm going to take off an hour, a couple hours for the day, I'll go to my boss and say, I'm doing this. He doesn't know where I'm at most of it. He called me today. He said, where are you? I said, I'm on Interstate 79. I'm coming down from Flatwoods. And we talked for 40 minutes while we're driving. But he said, he doesn't know where I'm at most of the time. I'm going to take a little bit of time off on Friday. I got to work for a while, but I'm taking Josiah and Jason and Rebecca with me because where I'm working, there's a place for them to go. So I told my boss, if all I do is drive up and work and drive back, it's a 7-hour day. But I'm going to take them with me, so while I'm up there, I'm going to take about 2 hours while they're with me and do the other stuff. Most days I don't take lunches. Today my lunch was wrapped peanut butter and jelly in a taco shell, soft shell taco, and drive down the highway. Okay. So and he understands that. So I'm taking him with me. Okay, he's fine. He doesn't matter to him. But I didn't have to tell him. But something inside me has to tell him. I'm going to take off early. I'm taking off half hour early. I let him know. John, you work. Starting times at 8. Most days I leave the house by 6. Most people work at our job, like their time is 8 to 5. Well, most days I start at 6. If I'm working 40 hours, I'm always got over 40 before I don't punch clock. So I've always worked more than 40 hours before Friday comes around. Okay, so he doesn't care what I'm taking on. Okay, but I still feel like inside of me I've got to say, Friday afternoon we'll take a couple hours. Fine. He has no problem. Okay. Some people can't do that. Okay, they can't tell somebody if they're not going to show up for work. Okay. When people do that work before, they forgot it was Monday. Like every Monday, they forget there was Monday. Oh, there's a Monday. You call them. They're supposed to be somewhere else. Okay. Verse 23. Whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord. Verse 24. Knowing that of the Lord you shall receive the reward for the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. That means, Charlie, when you're at school, you're teaching kids. Your boss is the principal, or the school board, or whoever. But you're serving Christ. And you're working as if you're serving Christ. When Miss Joe was working cleaning houses, it could be there's people in the house when she's cleaning. It could be there's nobody in the house when she's cleaning. And the idea is when they walk in after you've been cleaning, they should know you've been cleaning, right? Again, someone used to say if nobody can tell that you cleaned the house, but they really can tell if you didn't, right? If you didn't do anything, everybody knows. Okay, I've been in houses that said, "I've been cleaning all day." Really? Okay. Let's go. That's servants. Are you a servant? Every one of us works for somebody. We're supposed to be working as if we're working for God. Okay. Last part is this. Think of masters. Masters giving to your servants that which is just and equal. Now you also have a master in heaven. Just like the kids that are bitter and angry because the parents are hypocrites or whatever, employees get that way if their masters are that way. Okay, give that which is just and equal to balance out the equations. Okay, children are provoked to anger by "do as I say." Parents that said "do as I do." Parents and workers are the same thing. I'll give you this illustration. The owner of our company went with me week before last, I think it was. One day. He went with me, rode with me down to Beckley and back. We saw a couple customers, Charleston and Beckley. The owner of our company coming from Indiana. I met him a couple of years ago. We went for just a short drive and saw a couple people. And I could work for him real easy if he never sees me again. If I never see the guy on this side of eternity, Christian guy, if I never see that guy on this side of eternity, I know he's working. He knows I'm working. And he never has to wonder if I'm working. Okay? And the owner of the company. He never has to it's easy to work for somebody that's working, right? Charlie, I won't put you on the spot. If there's principals at the school or people that supervise you at the school, if they're doing their job, it makes you more pleased easily to do your job, right? If they're doing their job. Makes your job a lot easier, probably, right? And it's kind of always looking at this, and you think, well, the Bible's outdated, and that was penned down 2,000 years ago, right? And nothing has changed. There's masters that are just and equal, okay? And I've seen this. I've seen this in business. That the boss favors this person, gives them everything they want. The boss doesn't favor this person. It doesn't give them what they deserve. It's not just and equal. You know what this person's doing? Look for another job. They're treated right. I've seen people that they're mistreated at work by a boss. Okay, and whether this person may be doing a good job and this person doing a just as good a job. It gets no recognition for it. Doesn't get just. This person gets paid more, or whatever. This person's not getting that. That's not just and equal. They're going to look for somebody else paying for it, right? It's kind of funny. You can't drive through Charleston without seeing 30 people holding up signs. We'll work for food. Anything helps. God bless you. Okay. My first thought is, what job do you do? What kind of work do you do? I've asked people that. What kind of work do you do? Silence. They don't work. The parents didn't teach them to. Tam and I had this discussion about my dad yesterday, and this is because we're watching generations of grandparents, parents, children, and then those children's children, and those children's grandchildren. And my dad told the story that when he was, my granddad had a feed store, and my granddad's uncle had the dairy there at the house. At Jenkins Hall, it was just a dairy at the time. And my dad was just a little boy, and his dad, who only had one leg and walked on crutches, had brought a truckload of feed home. And my dad, who was just a little boy, his dad came down and said, "Son, get up, unload that truck of feed. That load of feed's carried in the barn." Okay, so my dad told me the story. He did not immediately go up there and unload that truck. His dad told him to, but he didn't. He did not immediately drop what he was doing and run up there and unload that truck. And so eventually he said he didn't do whatever he was doing. It didn't take him just a few minutes to go up there. He did eventually go up and to unload the truck, and it was already unloaded. His dad went up and did it. His dad on crutches was unloading 100-pound sacks of feed. He only had one leg. And so my dad told me this story to get me to do stuff, I guess. My dad told me this story. He said after that, his dad never one time had to tell him twice to do anything. He just told him he told him to go and load the truck and go do something, go milk the cows, run the cows off the hill, whatever he had to do, hoe out the garden, whatever. He said after that, he said his dad never had to tell him twice. He was always obedient to his father because of who his father was, right? Because that's the character of his father was then handed down to the son, which was my dad. And then my dad kind of lost out with me because I had the character. but I thought about that. Then the whole time I was growing up, whenever my dad wanted me to do something, I always wanted to do it. I just wanted to do it, right? I just wanted to do. If he was working on something, I wanted to help him work on it. If he asked me to do something, then I just automatically wanted to do it because he'd asked me to do it. Okay. The same thing with Rebecca growing up at the farm. And same thing with Jared when he came along when they're teenagers. And same thing now with Josiah. So not this Sunday, but the Sunday before last, on Saturday, I started wheeling manure out of the barn to cover the barn with horse manure, cover the garden with horse manure. So we got Josiah. My wheelbarrow is a great big one. It's as long as this and about that deep. And Josiah's is this wide and about that deep, right? Thread, plastic one, wooden handles. It's really nice. For someone who's 5 years old, that's what he wanted. And yeah, that's what he got last year. David and I picked it up when we were at a sale last year. Anyway, so Josiah worked with me as hard as he could. He's got a shovel in there, and I got my big pitchfork, and so he had a shovel. He wanted a pitchfork, so we got him a short pitchfork, and he worked as hard as he could, filling his wheelbarrow full of manure, and I filled mine full of manure. And, well, John, he's not carrying as much as you are. It doesn't matter. He's carrying his weight in cow manure out to the barn, out from the barn, out to the garden, and dumping it. Okay. Well, Brother John, you got a whip. No, come on, let's do this. Okay, set an example and say, come on, let's go. And so then we can stop and swing. We got our work done, then we go swing the swings. Right? We get our work done, then we do other stuff. And coming to the farm when my grandma lived when I was a kid. Coming to the farm was always work when I was a kid. It was always enjoyable. It was always fun. And work and then play, and there was always plenty of time to play. Lots of food to eat. Okay, and it's the same thing with Josiah now. I want to teach Josiah the same thing. That there's work, but we want to set the example. It's the parents' job to set the example. Okay? To masters, to be just and equal. And servants to work when no one's watching. And husbands to lead. Parents to lead the children. Set the example. Don't provoke to anger. Okay? Question? Comments? Jeff said, if you got food back, the only question I got in my mind is I thought they walked through with food. No comments or questions? Going once, going twice? Sorry, dismiss us then. We'll go back and eat what the kids eat. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for setting the example for your family.